It all starts on Christmas Eve, with the streets completely packed with people enjoying the festive vibe. The atmosphere is full of bright decorations and laughter echoing everywhere. While walking around, the MC watches a dad asking his daughter if she had fun, getting a super excited response from the little girl. However, he ends up bumping into a pedestrian and has to shrink back to make his way through the crowd. At that moment, the little girl looks up in awe and comments on the size of something. The MC just watches the scene in silence, feeling the weight of that situation. Frustrated, he reflects that surrounded by so many people on that street, he is the only one who is completely alone. Bothered by all of this, he wonders why he is always the one who has to shrink down for others to pass. But suddenly, the young man stops walking and fixes his eyes on something ahead. His eyes lock onto a specific detail that grabs his attention right in the middle of the street. He spots a man dressed as Santa Claus asking for spare change and notices there is another lonely person around. The old man is kneeling on the freezing ground, begging for help from anyone passing by. In front of him, a sign asks people to tell Santa a wish, and the young man admits he would normally walk right past without caring. But since today is Christmas Eve, the exact day his parents passed away in an accident and left him all alone, he decides to stop. So he opens his wallet and pulls out one bill to help the old guy. Placing the money in the donation box, the young man also offers the old man something to eat, making sure to mention it isn't spoiled. He leaves the snack right next to the cash, just trying to do a good deed. Right then, Santa grabs his hand tightly and praises his kindness. The old man insists on returning the favor and asks the young man to reveal his greatest wish. Spooked out and thinking the guy is crazy, the MC tries to pull away no matter what. But the grip on his hands gets even stronger and impossible to break. While the young man struggles to escape with no success, the old man claims he came specifically to grant the wish of a kind soul. Santa begs, explaining that he cannot return to his village until the wish is made. With no way out, the young guy asks if the man will let him go if he speaks up, getting a very hyped confirmation. Accepting the craziness, he takes a deep breath and starts revealing what he really wants. He asks to win the lottery, but Santa rejects it, demanding to know his most sincere wish. Faced with that pressure, the MC gets thoughtful about what he truly desires from the bottom of his heart. Deep down, all he ever wanted and needed was a family that would stay by his side and never abandon him. So he declares that his wish is to have a wife who resembles a bunny and a daughter as cute as a mongoose. The old man feels the sincerity of that request and realizes the young man has lived in loneliness for a very long time. Smiling, Santa mentions that he was very lucky today to find a soul so similar to his own. With a bizarre look, the old man promises to find him a pure-hearted wife and a beautiful daughter who will respect him. Wishing him a life full of joy, the stranger finally lets go of the MC's hands. The young man walks away calling the guy crazy, while Santa shouts that he will use all his power to make the wish come true. Still annoyed by the whole thing, he keeps walking, ignoring the old man who claims to have the support of all the Santas out there. Later on, the MC takes the subway to head back home. He holds onto the train bar while the trip goes smoothly. Leaning against the seat, he keeps thinking about Santa's nonsense, completely sure the guy was out of his mind. Even so, the young man admits to himself the real reason he revealed his dream to a complete stranger. Watching a happy family in the train car, he acknowledges that he just wanted a chance to be happy too. Closing his eyes out of exhaustion, he simply wished for a normal life just like anyone else's. Suddenly, he catches a bizarre smell and notices the atmosphere has gotten extremely freezing. Waking up confused and with a headache, the young man tries to figure out what is going on. When he finally opens his eyes properly, he is completely shocked by what he sees. Without understanding a thing, the MC finds himself trapped inside a wooden carriage being pulled down a dirt road. Freaking out and wearing only his underwear, he grabs the cage bars demanding to know where he ended up. Right then, he spots a huge guy with long hair and a rough look right next to him. Looking around the carriage, the young man realizes he is surrounded by several people wearing very old-school clothes. Observing the state of the prisoners, he comes to the crazy conclusion that he is in the Middle Ages. Completely disoriented, the MC tries to process that absurd reality. To make matters worse, he notices he cannot understand a single word anyone else is saying. Everything feels like a movie set, with an unknown language and zero Asian people around. Not knowing if he is living a wild dream or if this is real, he goes into full panic mode. Finally, it hits him, and he realizes he has been transported to another world. The intense cold of that place makes the young man's body shiver nonstop while he tries to catch his breath. He spots a man slumped in the corner of the cage, wondering if the guy has passed away, but decides to focus on his own survival. Apologizing in a low voice, the MC approaches the body lying on the floor. With no other option to avoid freezing, he takes the lifeless man's shirt to wear. Sitting exhausted on the floor with his new clothes, he remembers Santa's bizarre promise about granting his wish. Totally defeated, he wonders if this is the so-called happiness he was promised, and if he misunderstood the word his entire life. Wishing to wake up from this nightmare soon, the young man admits he has completely lost track of how many days have passed. Stuck in the carriage, the group kept traveling endlessly on dirt roads right through the forest. During this awful time, the MC figured out that everyone inside, including himself, were slaves. On top of that, he finally understood why the soldiers were dragging everyone all over the place. Watching the movement outside, he realized the goal of the trip was to sell the prisoners. Until at one of the camps, the wooden cage's lock is finally opened. While the soldiers shout orders in a weird language, a guy looking like a village chief starts inspecting the slaves. Even though accepting slavery hurt his pride, the young man started feeling a tiny bit of hope as he stepped out of the carriage. He believed that, having a decent physique, he would be sold quickly and manage to escape that wooden prison. With that, the young man felt this might be his first real chance to improve his life since dropping into this world. However, all that hope got crushed by despair after visiting several other villages with zero success. The carriage continued its endless journey, crossing mountains and forests without anyone buying him. The soldiers kept marching without resting, taking the rejected prisoners down a long dirt path. Tossed on the cage floor, the MC wonders how his life reached such a miserable point. Remembering his mom asking him to live life to the fullest, he questions if it even makes sense to keep fighting. Remembering his past, the MC sees the image of a boy demanding an answer. Totally drained, he calls out for his parents and wonders if he will be able to endure this extreme situation. Right then, the memory of that crazy Santa promising to use all his power to grant his wish pops up. Holding a rusty fork, the young man gets furious and wishes that both this world and his old one would just go straight down the drain. With his fist clenched from so much anger, he comes to a drastic conclusion about what true happiness would be. In despair, the prisoner bangs his own head hard against the cage bars, just wanting to end it all and escape the pain. But soon his survival instinct kicks in and he backs off, realizing that giving up isn't the answer. Thinking about how precious a family is, the young man decides he does not want to end up losing his life in a place like that. Still panting and completely bruised up, he stays slumped in the cage trying to get a little bit of his sanity back. Suddenly, a hand reaches through the bars offering a piece of fresh bread. Looking up, he sees a woman with blonde hair handing over the food with a lot of kindness. Not understanding the language, the young man just listens to the woman say something in a friendly tone. Right next to her, a blonde little girl also watches the scene, holding firmly onto the wooden bars. The duo stays there looking at the fallen prisoner, sending out a vibe of peace right in the middle of that nightmare. Far from there, the image of a humble wooden cabin appears deep in the woods. Inside the cabin, the woman and the little girl share a simple meal at a wooden table. The little one sips her soup, paying attention to every gulp so she doesn't waste a single drop. Worried, the young woman pushes her own plate toward the girl and tells her to eat more. Hesitant, the kid stares at the food, not sure if she should accept the offer. After admitting she is hungry, the woman insists that this is exactly why she is giving up her share. However, the girl turns down the offer, stating that if she is hungry, the lady must be too. Touched by the attitude, the woman stops eating and just watches the child's purity. Agreeing, she promises that they will both eat and stay together. But the peace is interrupted by violent knocks on the door, announcing the arrival of the village elder. Startled, the woman hugs the girl, while the man announces that the council chose one of the slaves to be her new husband. Outside, the elder's shadow declares that the decision is final, and that she must go up the mountains with the chosen one. The young woman squeezes the child in her arms, hearing the order to meet the soldiers at the village entrance by dawn. Fallen on the dark floor, she goes into a panic, not expecting them to make this decision so fast. Trembling with fear of getting beaten again, the young lady regrets not having a way to run from that situation. Looking at the little one sleeping in her arms, she promises she won't abandon her, even though they met just recently. Holding her own chest, the young woman decides she cannot let the child suffer from loneliness ever again. In her mind, the memory of the girl's little face soaked in tears comes back. The little one was crying desperately, sobbing non-stop after losing absolutely everything. Back then, the little girl was completely isolated in the cabin while pouring her heart out. Reliving that moment, the woman wonders what her own fate will be from now on. Curled up in a dark corner, she mentally begs not to have to go through the same nightmare as before. Taking a deep breath, the young lady tries to find the strength to face this harsh reality. Looking at the kid sleeping hugged to a teddy bear, she realizes the fear is the exact same for both of them. Soon, she reflects on the 5-year-old girl who doesn't even have a name yet, daughter of the man who passed away. Right then, an old trauma resurfaces, reminding her of when her own father sold her for a simple rabbit pelt. The memory takes her back to the very first day she stepped into that same isolated cabin. Because she arrived a little late, the man who was supposed to be her husband kicked her mercilessly before she even unpacked. The beating session was brutal over such a pointless reason, crushing whatever hope she had left. Fallen on the wooden floor and covered in bruises, the young woman felt the heavy weight of that miserable life. But through the pain, she slowly lifted her head when she noticed a tiny presence in the room. With bruised eyes, she focused on the tiny figure watching her in complete silence. In the middle of that absolute nightmare, the little girl stared at her with a mix of curiosity and innocence. Showing zero fear, the little one approached the fallen woman and helped her out in her own clumsy way. The young lady recognized that this child with an angel's face was the only one to reach out to her. On that exact same day, the abusive husband went out into the mountains and never came back, leaving the two of them alone. The monster ended up being taken out by wolves during his hunt, making sure he would never torment them again. Upon getting the news, the young woman felt a massive wave of relief, but it was quickly swallowed by heavy anxiety. After all, she knew very well how the world worked and what was waiting for her in the future. Without a husband to protect them, the two became defenseless sheep ready for the taking outside the fence. Back to the present, the woman and the child walk hand in hand toward the village entrance. The locals gossip around while the duo gets closer to the meeting spot. Hyped about the movement, the little girl points at the huge wooden carriage pulling up. The woman watches the prisoner transport get closer with her heart racing. Gathering her courage, she steps up to the bars to see who the council had picked to be her new husband. Through the gaps in the wood, she finally spots the MC chained up in the cage. Their eyes meet and the young man stares at her with a look of deep shock. She remembers the time the soldiers beat up the prisoner, calling him useless for not doing anything right. Back then, the guard got annoyed by their interaction and complained about the dramatic show. The cowardly attacker even blamed the young lady and the kid for ruining his appetite. Reliving the terror, the young woman feels her heart pounding just remembering that cruelty. But upon focusing on the young man's face, the fear gets replaced by a feeling of pity. The memory of the moment she offered the piece of bread comes back crystal clear. On that day, she and the little girl just wanted to ease the slave's suffering. The young lady reached through the bars, handing over the food with all the compassion in the world. And that was how the paths of that little family and the prisoner crossed for the very first time. Back to reality, a villager shouts, letting them know the soldiers have finally arrived. The man orders the woman to head back to the village while they settle things with the guards, and she agrees. Holding the child's hand, the young lady says it's time for them to get out of there. As they walk away, the little one turns her head back, watching the carriage pull away. Inside the cage, the MC stays quiet, holding tightly onto the bread he got from his future wife. Wasting no time, the young man takes a bite of the bread while still locked in the cage. But the peace does not last, as the guards start shouting insults and drag him out without any care. Violently, he gets tossed face first into the dirt. Still holding the food tightly, his stomach growls loud from so much hunger. In the courtyard, one of the soldiers gives the order to begin while he remains on the ground. Right after, a guard pulls out a dagger and steps toward the prisoner. Acting fast, the soldier cuts the ropes tying his wrists. Surprised, the MC watches the man use a glowing magical paper, totally shocked that magic actually exists there. Sighing out of pure exhaustion, he wonders what kind of crazy world this is. Just then, a villager approaches the soldier and says some weird words. The man then turns to the young guy and points in the direction he needs to go. Not understanding the language, the prisoner just stares at the villager looking completely confused. The view shifts to a simple wooden cabin surrounded by massive trees. On the floor, there is a bag of supplies the newcomer has to take, since the village is covering the food for a bit. However, everything will have to be paid back later, and the woman already knows her new husband doesn't speak the language. An older lady mentions that the village hated the late husband and only took him in because they needed a hunter. She calms the young woman down, saying the new husband must be different since the soldiers called him a commoner. Watching the situation, the elder lady notices that despite his rough look, the young man's hands are soft like a noble's. Holding the young lady's hands, she guarantees that hands like those have never hit anyone, and they will live well if he works hard. But the young woman replies in a sad tone that she doesn't even care about living well. Her only wish is that the new husband isn't a violent guy. Looking at her sleeping daughter, she'll be satisfied if the two of them can just stay in their little corner of the house in peace. Suddenly, loud knocks echo on the wood and a voice demands them to open the door. The young lady jumps, startled by the sudden arrival. The door swings open roughly, revealing the silhouette of the villager and the newcomer. The old man announces bluntly that he brought the guy she is going to marry. Totally shocked, the young woman watches the young man walk into the cabin following the elder's orders. The MC takes his first steps inside, amazed and confused about where he ended up. Clinging to her daughter, the woman shakes in surprise as she realizes he is the exact same prisoner from the cage. Frozen in the middle of the room, he stares back at her, trying to process if that is actually his future wife. The young lady shrinks her shoulders in fear, overwhelmed by the guy's massive size. On the flip side, he just watches her with a very calm expression. Soon, he recognizes her as the kind woman who gave him the bread earlier. Confused by her reaction, the young man wonders why she is trembling so much. Losing his patience, the elder starts yelling, weirded out by the fact that the newcomer is just standing there like a statue. Using force, the old man shoves the MC toward the scared young woman. With the push, he stumbles awkwardly and stops right in front of her. Immediately, the villager grabs the young guy's wrist firmly. Without any hesitation, the man forces the newcomer's hand together with the young lady's in a tight grip. Smiling proudly, the old man claims that now they finally look like a real couple. Completely lost, the young woman has no idea what to make of the awkward vibe that just settled in. The young guy doesn't understand the words either, but given the situation, the memory of that crazy Santa invades his mind. The image of the promised pure-hearted wife overlaps with the young woman's face, reminding him of a little bunny. Right after, the promise of the beautiful and cute daughter reflects in the shy little girl sitting in the corner. Mind blown, the MC finally realizes that Santa wasn't crazy and actually granted his wish. Watching the woman hugging her daughter, he recognizes the miracle, but he's pretty salty about the method used. After all, to make this dream happen, he got tossed into a bizarre world and went through all kinds of torture. Frowning, the young man recalls the extreme hunger and freezing cold that almost ended his life. Fueled by rage, he swears he's going to take that Santa out if their paths ever cross again. The newcomer's killer vibe scares the little family, who just watches him in pure fear. The next day outside, the men of the village are talking amongst themselves in the unknown language. Scratching the back of his neck, the MC feels like he's going to lose his mind, not understanding a single word. Nearby, the elder gives instructions to a more experienced hunter. The man walks up to the newcomer and reaches out his hand, looking like he wants to greet him. Being polite, the young man accepts the handshake, but immediately feels an insanely strong grip. The hunter glares at him aggressively, making the young guy think this brutality is just the normal way people say hello around there. However, the malice in the guy's eyes gives away his real intentions. Deciding to fight back, the MC squeezes back with all his strength, making the hunter scream out in pain. The man drops to his knees crying while holding his own crushed hand. Furious over the humiliation, the hunter curses at the young man while the elder throws a bow on the ground. The elder keeps yelling his orders while picking up the hunting weapon. The newcomer grabs the bow tossed his way, totally confused by the old man's attitude. Soon the crying hunter points toward the forest, making it clear they don't want a physical fight. Making little ears with his hands on his head, the villager tries to mimic a bunny. The mime work pays off, and the young man finally understands they want to teach him how to hunt. The makeshift instructor does the motion of pulling the bowstring to show how it's done. Then he points aggressively, demanding the newcomer to try the move. At that exact moment, a white rabbit jumps out of the bushes. Desperate, the hunter tells him to shoot already, but the young man panics since he has never held a bow in his life. Kneeling on the ground, the newcomer aims, trying to copy the Olympic athletes he used to see on TV. But upon releasing the string, a glowing magic energy arrow appears out of nowhere and shoots out at high speed. The glowing projectile slices through the air and hits the rabbit dead on. Both the instructor and the shooter are left with their jaws on the floor, having zero clue what kind of spell that was. Even the village elder mumbles words of pure shock after witnessing the match. Cutting through the surprised vibe, the young wife and the little girl show up holding a basket to visit him. The newcomer turns his face looking completely shocked as he notices someone approaching. In silence, he just watches the duo that just arrived in the forest. The young woman walks calmly holding the basket, accompanied by the little one that the young man recognizes as his future wife. At that moment, his heart skips a beat as he focuses on her. While the elder and the hunter are still dumbfounded by the magic, the little family approaches peacefully. Shortly after, everyone sits on a blanket on the ground to take a break and eat. The vibe gets super chill while the small group shares the meal in the middle of the woods. Holding the hot bowl, he enjoys the stew they made. The meal goes on in absolute silence, since the language barrier prevents any kind of conversation. Suddenly, the young man turns his head fast toward the two of them. Observing the scene, he gets reflective about the situation he is currently in. A feeling of peace takes over the MC as he sees them right there with him. Thinking about the word family, he remembers that this was always something completely foreign in his life from his teenage years all the way to adulthood. However, now destiny just literally dropped a family right into the lap of a guy like him. Even though he would have preferred if everything happened naturally, he admits the order of things doesn't matter after so much suffering. Looking up at the sky, the young guy confesses his urge to take Santa down for the bizarre method, but feels something extra in his chest. With a lighter mind, he mentally thanks the old man for actually keeping the promise. The next day, the group starts walking down the dirt road at a very fast pace. Carrying a massive bag on his back, he looks back worried if the two are managing to keep up with the pace. The young woman pants from exhaustion in the middle of the trail, showing the trip is taking a heavy toll. Frustrated, the MC regrets not even being able to ask if she is okay because of the language barrier. Feeling the pressure of the environment, he decides he needs to adapt to this crazy world as quickly as possible. Right then, the young man stops walking abruptly. An old memory pops up, bringing back valuable advice that you should never hesitate when you want to protect someone. The voice from the past reinforces that you have to act the exact second the urge to care appears. Without thinking twice, Juin drops the heavy luggage on the dirt road. Quickly, he marches toward the young lady and the little one who fell behind. The little girl shrinks her shoulders, shaking in fear at the big guy's sudden approach. Kneeling in front of them, the young man tries to calm the situation, asking them in his own language not to be scared. Totally terrified by the unexpected move, the young woman freezes, having no idea what he is going to do. Using his native tongue in a clumsy way, he says something that leaves the young lady completely confused. At the same time, the little one panics and starts crying out of fear. Realizing their trauma, Juin concludes he cannot even keep a neutral face to avoid causing so much terror. With that, he excuses himself and reaches his arms out toward the two of them. In one swift move, the young man lifts the lady off the ground without breaking a sweat. The young woman widens her eyes, shocked to find herself in the newcomer's arms along with the child. Carefully, he adjusts his posture to hold the little family securely. Showing an absurd amount of strength, the big guy stands up carrying both of them at the exact same time. Surprised by the unusual action, the little girl focuses her eyes on his face without understanding a thing. Completely thrown off balance, the wife holds on tight to the young man's broad shoulders. Turning his face softly, Juin asks her to hold on tight during the ride. As he resumes the walk carrying the triple weight, he thinks it's absurd just how light they are. Worried about the family's malnutrition, the MC focuses on learning to hunt and speak the language ASAP. The young woman just watches him in silence, while he accepts his life is going to be super busy from now on. Comforted by the body heat, she relaxes and rests her head on her new protector's back. Feeling the calm vibe of the moment, he adjusts his hands to make sure they are comfortable. The young lady's initial fear fades away, making room for a brand new feeling of safety. The trip through the forest continues smoothly, following the footsteps of the village elder. Finally, the group arrives at the final destination, stopping in front of a very old wooden cabin. Without much fuss, the old man turns his back and leaves, letting the family be alone. Staring at the shack, Juin realizes the place is going to be even colder than his old bedroom back on Earth. Shivering in disgust, the young man mutters about how much he has always hated the cold with a burning passion. Gathering his courage, he pushes the heavy wooden door to inspect their new home. But right off the bat, the newcomer gets a massive jump scare looking at the inside. Next to him, the young woman widens her eyes, paralyzed by the shock of what she finds in there. Without understanding anything, he asks why she suddenly started tearing up. Desperate, the young lady runs past him and rushes into the cabin. The MC just follows her movement, staying at the door to observe the situation. Staring at the dark room, he realizes the severity of the problem in that isolated place. He quickly figures out that while the two were at the village, someone completely looted all the tools and furniture that were there. The young man goes on high alert, knowing he has zero weapons to defend them if some wild beast shows up in that extreme cold. Looking for his wife, he finds her sitting devastated on the floor in the brush. In silence, Juin sits down on the dirt right next to her to keep her company. Very gently, the big guy reaches his hand out toward the young lady's hair. He strokes her head softly, trying to offer some kind of comfort. In a calm tone, the husband tells her not to worry about the problems that just popped up. With teary eyes, the young woman tries to decipher the intention behind that stranger's words. Anxious, she reflects that they cannot even talk and he doesn't have a single clue how to hunt. Fear consumes the young lady, who doubts their ability to stay alive in such a cruel place. However, the young guy's calm face gives off a completely unexpected level of confidence. Guaranteeing the safety of the little family, the newcomer promises he is going to protect them. Mesmerized by that attitude, the young woman's anxiety starts to melt away little by little. A lone tear rolls down her face as she feels the absolute sincerity of that moment. Bathed in the sunlight, the couple shares a deep connection right in the middle of nowhere. Totally giving in, the wife doesn't understand why that simple touch brought her such massive relief. Reminded of his past on Earth, Juin reflects that he has always lived completely alone since the day his parents passed away. Even dealing with that massive loneliness, the young man held on to life and fought with all his might to survive. Holding the young woman in his arms, he decides he finally has a real family now, and there is zero reason not to handle the challenges. Thumping his chest, the big guy guarantees he is going to do absolutely everything to provide for and take great care of the two of them. Those comforting words make the young lady calm down and let out a long sigh of relief. Suddenly, a loud noise of a stomach growling from hunger completely ruins the emotional vibe of the moment. Scared, the little girl runs desperately toward her mom while shouting some unknown words. The little one grabs her mom's dress trying to defend her, asking in her language for the big man not to hurt Lizzie. After that scare, the vibe goes back to being super chill with the small group hanging out in the sunlit forest. Looking closely at the young woman, the MC is still trying to process the fact that he just comforted a crying lady. Right then, he looks at the scared kid next to them and admits this whole family dynamic is completely new in his life. Full of questions, Juin tries to figure out whose kid that is and why the young woman gave him bread earlier. The young man touches the young lady's face with extreme care, still asking himself deep down what made her cry so many tears. Despite all the initial confusion, he comes to the conclusion that if they keep living together and putting in the effort, they will be totally fine. In a protective hug, the husband promises he will never let them cry again and will do everything to be the greatest dad in the world. In the middle of the forest, Juin hugs them both affectionately, promising neither of them will ever regret becoming his family. The small wooden cabin remains isolated in the woods, bathed in the soft sunlight. But inside, the vibe shifts and the young guy ends up sitting on the floor, keeping a bit of distance from the two who are huddled on the bed. Scratching his head in frustration, he realizes that whole emotional moment from earlier did absolutely nothing and they are back to square one. Assessing the situation, the husband finds it a relief that they are just suspicious instead of terrified, but he's not sure how to act right now. Just then, the big guy gets an idea and points to his own chest with a very determined look. He sits up straighter on the wooden floor and gets the attention of the young woman and the little girl. Wanting to break the ice, the MC introduces himself by saying his own name loud and clear. Since they are going to live together from now on, he figures they at least need to know each other's names, even without speaking the language. The young lady repeats the guy's name with a bit of trouble, trying to get used to the weird pronunciation. Hyped about the progress, Juin reaches his hand out to her and asks to know what she is called, building up the anticipation. Feeling shy, the young woman finally reveals her name in a very soft voice. The young man immediately repeats the word to confirm if he got it right, showing he is paying full attention. Satisfied, he compliments the young lady, telling her he thinks the name is really pretty. Next, the husband points at the little girl wanting to know what to call her, but the kid gets a huge scare and hides. Lizzie quickly hugs the child protectively, while Juin is left confused as to why the vibe got so weird all of a sudden. Seeing the girl's sad reaction, he ends up guessing that the little one probably hasn't been given a name yet. The MC stares at the two of them in silence, feeling a heavy weight in his heart as he realizes this harsh reality. Without hesitating, he places his hand on the little girl's head and decides he is going to give her a beautiful name. Thinking for a second, the young man picks a famous name straight from his childhood memories back on Earth. He wants her to be just like the main character of that old story, who went on epic adventures alongside many friends. Besides that, he hopes the girl finds her own happiness and grows up full of love. The little girl tries to pronounce the curious word, and Juin confirms this name will bring a lot of good people into her life. Completely enchanted by the gift, the little one flashes a gorgeous smile and embraces her brand new identity. Later on, outside the cabin and under the late afternoon light, the big guy starts chopping wood non-stop. Watching everything from a distance, Lizzie finds this new husband's behavior extremely weird. She notices that even though he is way bigger and stronger than her late abuser, he doesn't hurt her at all. The young woman reflects that the guy is completely different from anyone she has ever crossed paths with, making it seem like he's from another world. Whispering his name, she has no clue what language that is, but feels her husband's voice is very gentle and soft. That really messes with the young lady's head, as she realizes she has never been treated with such kindness for as long as she can remember. Seeing her husband wipe the sweat off his face with a smile, she keeps asking herself why she is getting so much kindness for absolutely nothing. Analyzing the guy working hard, the young woman gets a strong feeling that he simply does not belong in that isolated place. Interrupting her thoughts, Juin raises his hand and calls out to her in a super hyped way. Focusing on his face, the young lady takes a good look at the dark color of her husband's hair and eyes, freezing up completely. Her mind immediately pulls up a recent rumor about a country at war that supposedly managed to summon a real legendary hero. The gossip said the so-called savior had the exact same rare physical features as her new partner. While she tries to process this crazy idea, the big guy casually walks toward her. Staring at the young man up close, the young woman admits to herself that the resemblance to the legend is super strong. However, she tosses the idea out instantly, knowing a warrior like that would be living in the luxury of a palace, not in some forgotten brush. To top it off, she tries to calm herself down by remembering that whole magical summoning story is just cheap talk from the locals. Right then, the MC stops right in front of his wife, who gets slightly startled by the sudden approach. Looking closer because of the sun, the young lady notices his hair and eyes are actually leaning more towards a dark brown. Letting out a sigh of relief, she concludes he is just a regular big guy, but quickly notices something weird about her own reaction. Not understanding her own feelings, the young woman wonders why finding out he isn't a famous hero made her feel so relieved. She thinks it's all way too rushed, considering they literally just met that very same day. Breaking the tense vibe completely, Juin reaches his hand to the young woman's head and affectionately strokes her hair. Totally caught off guard, she stays perfectly still feeling the touch, since she is not used to getting affection at all. In her sad reality, the only reason a man ever raised his hand toward her was to hurt her with zero mercy. But now that soft touch gliding through her hair brings a totally different and comforting feeling. Closing her eyes slowly, the young woman admits internally that it feels really good and wishes from the bottom of her heart that he doesn't stop. The husband gently slides his hands down to her face, while she hopes to keep getting this attention. The vibe heats up fast and the young guy's face turns reddish while he leans in completely silently. With her heart racing, the young lady matches his gaze with her cheeks burning with embarrassment from being so close. Giving in to the moment and totally captivated by his wife's charm, he leans his body forward. Their faces are inches apart and the young woman slightly widens her eyes, waiting for the inevitable. The big guy closes his eyes, ready to kiss the young lady right there among the trees. Suddenly, the romantic mood crashes and he pulls back spooked, as if a feeling of hesitation blocked the way. Sweating cold from the broken expectation, the young man turns his face away completely embarrassed and tries to play off the failed moment. Acting out of pure desperation to escape the awkwardness, he grabs an empty bucket and bolts away from her. Gripping the wooden handle tightly, the husband flees the scene, leaving the poor young woman alone and confused behind. Running from the embarrassment, Juin dashes through the woods carrying nothing but a wooden bucket. Left behind, Lizzie is in absolute shock over her husband's sudden reaction. While running through the forest, the young man thinks he is an absolute crazy person and keeps imagining what his wife must be thinking of him right now. Pausing for a second, the MC reflects that even though they are married, they literally just met. Without even being able to communicate with her, he wonders if the best move would just be to pretend nothing ever happened. Right then, his footsteps finally come to a halt deep in the woods. Walking a bit more through the dark, Juin wonders where he ended up and just how far he actually went. The environment around him gets thicker and more intimidating by the second. Holding the bucket, he decides to grab the water quickly and hurry back to the camp. But out of nowhere, a sinister presence makes the young man freeze up completely. Right behind him, the giant silhouette of a beast appears from the dark forest. The creature's red eyes glow intensely as it locks onto its prey. Hearing the monstrous growl, the husband turns his head slowly, consumed by pure terror. Staring the beast down, he can't believe his eyes when he realizes it's a massive wolf. Totally paralyzed by fear, the MC ends up dropping to his knees on the ground. Acting purely on survival instinct, the young man grabs a thick branch lying on the floor. Wasting no time, the wolf charges at full speed and snaps its jaws wide open right at him. With the impact, the beast bites down on the wood violently while the MC tries to block the attack. Using all his strength, Juin screams desperately trying to hold the monster back. However, the creature's raw power is overwhelming and ends up slamming the young guy violently against the ground. Being pinned down by the furious beast, he curses the situation while trying his best not to become dinner. In the midst of the despair, Lizzie's husband roars that he isn't just going to perish in a place like that. Pushing the wood back with sheer willpower, he makes it clear he refuses to lose his life right there. Almost out of breath, the young man keeps up the raw struggle against the animal's sharp fangs. The pressure is so heavy that his whole body starts aching like it's on fire. Suddenly, a weird sensation takes over the MC, who widens his eyes in confusion. Without any warning, intense flames explode right in the wolf's face. Juin jumps up fast, realizing his own arm is completely covered in fire. Spooked by the magic, the monster backs off while the young man gets into a fighting stance. Taking advantage of the opening, the MC lets out a battle cry and strikes the beast with his flaming arm. The fiery attack hits the monster dead on, dealing some devastating damage. Totally defeated, the massive wolf drops lifeless to the forest floor, letting off smoke. Tossed on the grass and panting, the young man tries to wrap his head around how his arm caught fire out of nowhere. Looking at his own skin, he finds it bizarre that his clothes don't have a single burn mark. With that, it finally clicks, and he figures out he just used real magic. His mind immediately jumps to those fiction stories where the hero gets powers after dropping into a new world. The MC remembers that becoming an overpowered mage is the most common cliché in these scenarios. Hyped about the possibility, Juin decides to run a quick field test right then and there. Stretching his arm out confidently, he orders a fireball to it. Super excited, the young guy spends a long time yelling out magic attacks in several different poses, but absolutely nothing happens. Frustrated, he tries to cast other famous fire spells, hoping something will actually work. He even tests out spirit summoning and dragon breath magic right on top of the wolf's carcass. But after embarrassing himself for so long, the MC gives up and just sits on the dirt looking completely foolish. Despite the fail, he notices his bruises healed up a bit, confirming the magic is real and is going to be super useful for hunting. With a smile, the husband is already picturing a chill future, providing plenty of food and comfort for his new family. Still thinking about it, he concludes magic will be essential to heal the two of them, since there are 0 doctors in that isolated village. Getting up from the ground, the MC decides to take things slow so he doesn't repeat his past mistakes. A bitter memory invades his mind, bringing back the grief of losing his parents and the feeling of abandonment. Back then, his relatives cruelly blamed him for the passing of his grandpa, who was perfectly healthy until he adopted him. During the wake, he was physically attacked by his own family in a fit of absolute rage. Being humiliated by everyone, the boy was called a curse who only brought tragedy to anyone around him. Those cruel words broke the young man's spirit, and Juin just took the blame in silence. Snapping back to reality, the hunter grabs the monster's carcass, knowing he needs to skin it. Throwing the heavy wolf on his back, he decides to hurry back home before any other beasts show up. While walking, the young man is thankful he watched his grandpa prepare animals in the past, because that is going to help him out big time now. Walking under the moonlight, he gives a sad smile, thinking the old man would be proud to see him like this. Looking at his own hand, the husband focuses on the next issue, trying to figure out how he is going to train his powers. Meanwhile, back at the old cabin, the vibe is pure peace with Lizzie cooking dinner on the wood stove. Excited, the young lady asks little Dorothy for a bowl, and she runs right over to help. Taking the item, the mom gives the kid a sweet head pat and thanks her for the help with a gentle smile. The little girl flashes a massive smile, completely overjoyed with the praise in her new life. Suddenly, the little one hears footsteps outside and runs super hyped toward the door. Leaning her tiny hands on the wooden window, Dorothy peeks into the yard trying to spot if Lizzie's husband is back yet. Searching through the dark, the kid lets out a confused hum since she doesn't see anyone right away. But a split second later, the giant wolf's messy face pops up in the window, making the girl scream in absolute terror. The little one falls backward crying in pure panic as she comes face to face with the horrifying monster. Hearing the screams, Lizzie goes into full panic mode and grabs the kitchen knife to defend herself. Driven by motherly instinct, the young woman tells Dorothy to stay back and runs outside totally armed. As soon as she steps through the door, the young lady widens her eyes, completely in shock at the scene. She finds Juin practically passing out from exhaustion while holding up the absurd weight of the dead beast. The monster's carcass drops heavily right in front of his wife, who is still gripping the knife while shaking. Dropping to his knees to catch his breath, the husband calls out their names, super relieved he finally made it back. The MC just stays there panting on the lawn, having 0 clue about the absolute terror he just caused his family. Realizing the beast is already out for the count and that the young guy protected them, the tension leaves the young woman's body. Completely drained after the jump scare, Lizzie lets the knife slip from her hand and fall to the ground. Frantic about the situation, Lizzie rushes to her husband and checks his body looking for injuries. Stuttering, he calms her down saying he got hurt, but he is already feeling fine. Right after, little Dorothy also approaches crying heavily and hugs his legs in a mix of relief and pure terror. Very gently, Juin holds his wife by the shoulders and guarantees he only took a bite to the arm, claiming everything is perfectly fine. Resting on the ground next to the dead giant wolf, the young guy comforts his new family, asking them not to worry so much. But suddenly, the young woman hugs him with all her might and confesses she is relieved, catching the MC totally off guard. Hearing the young lady repeat the same words non-stop, he tries to decode the language and gets that she is just expressing how grateful she is that he is still breathing. Right then, the little girl rubs her face against the big guy's leg in tears, showing she was worried sick about him. Watching the girl's state, the husband gets the similar message and beats himself up internally for breaking his promise not to make them cry. The next day, the morning breaks peacefully in the forest, bringing a chill vibe to the small wooden cabin. Out in the yard, Juin starts working hard cutting the meat from the massive defeated monster on top of a rustic table. Using a super sharp knife, the hunter pulls the thick fur with force, separating the animal's pelt very carefully. He wipes the sweat off his forehead and reflects that the job looked easy when he watched his grandpa do it. However, he admits the solo gig is taking way longer than he expected. Wiped out by the non-stop effort, the young man decides the work is way too tough and that he needs to try a totally different method next time. Just as he finishes cutting a huge chunk of meat trying to get the job done fast, his wife calls his name softly. The MC turns around instantly and spots the young woman standing right there at the cabin door waiting for him. Turning his head after hearing the call, the MC immediately recognizes his wife's voice. Walking toward the young lady, Juin calls her name while she holds a large wooden bucket. The young woman places the container on the ground right in front of him, and the young man asks her to toss the meat in there, leaving her super confused. Not quite getting it, he figures his wife is just offering the bucket to store the cut pieces. Scratching his chin, the hunter tries to jog his memory to remember how to say a simple thank you in that weird language. Stuttering a bit from the lack of practice, he finally manages to thank her for the help, completely catching the young lady by surprise. Lizzie's cheeks turn bright red instantly, clearly moved by her husband's gentle attitude. Noticing her silence, the young man awkwardly scratches his cheek and wonders internally if he just said something completely stupid. However, the young woman points at herself and repeats the thank you word, sounding a bit unsure. Wanting to close the gap between them, the big guy takes a step forward, stepping firmly on the grass. Flashing a gentle smile, the husband confirms the thank you, looking deep into her eyes. Totally flustered by the proximity, the young lady looks down while he just replies that she doesn't need to thank him. Holding the wooden bucket, Juin reflects that he never even heard a thank you from his own family in the past. Watching his wife bend down to help, he admits the young lady didn't do anything crazy besides bringing the container. But living with her is bringing a bunch of brand new experiences into his life, including the time their lips almost touched. With her face completely red, the young woman tries to process the wave of emotions that just flooded her chest all at once. Dying of embarrassment, she turns around and bolts toward the cabin, but the curiosity about her husband just won't leave her mind. The young lady wonders if he has kissed other women in the past, and if their hearts beat this fast too. Touching her chest, Lizzie feels a weird ache and admits the emotional mess almost makes her want to cry. Suddenly, she runs back to help with the chore, leaving the MC completely startled by the sudden shift. Grabbing a piece of meat, the wife tries to help out, while the husband finds it bizarre that he is the one doing the heavy lifting. The two start packing everything into the bucket together, and Juin finds it strange how naturally he is acting around her. Right then, their hands end up bumping into each other by accident while dropping the meat into the wood. The vibe gets heavy instantly, and the hunter goes into full panic mode as he stares at his wife's face up close. Building up the expectation with the closeness, the young lady simply shuts her eyes pretty tight. Going with the flow, the young man also closes his eyes and slowly leans his face toward hers. The couple is just millimeters apart, almost touching lips in a totally improvised kiss. But the courage vanishes and they both pull back fast, with the husband calling himself an idiot and having no idea why she closed her eyes. An awkward silence takes over the spot while he holds the bucket, avoiding eye contact with the young woman. Totally freaking out on the inside, Lizzie panics, thinking she made it way too obvious that she was waiting for him to kiss her. Breaking the ice, the hunter turns his face and looks at his wife with confidence, catching the young lady completely off guard. Determined not to embarrass herself again, the young woman decides to keep her eyes wide open to avoid any misunderstandings. Without giving her time to think, Juin leans in and steals a quick kiss, leaving the girl with her eyes wide open in shock. Pulling his face back slowly, he flashes a subtle smile while his wife stays totally frozen, processing what just went down. Satisfied, the MC grabs the heavy bucket and starts to walk away, but ends up noticing a tiny presence right nearby. Little Dorothy was hiding and watching the whole thing, making the mom freak out upon realizing her daughter saw the kiss. Dying of embarrassment over the situation, the young lady turns around and sprints inside the cabin to hide. Letting his wife run off, Juin keeps walking casually through the yard with the little girl following close behind. The vibe gets chill again while the big guy and the kid walk side by side on the green grass, carrying the heavy load. Trying to be polite, the young man flashes a huge smile and thanks the little one for helping with the meat. But the kid doesn't react, making the MC figure she is probably waiting to be called by her new name. Fixing the mistake right away, he calls her Dorothy and thanks her again, taking the girl by surprise. Hearing her own name makes the little girl break into a radiant smile of pure joy while she pushes the side of the bucket. Later on, already inside the wooden cabin, Lizzie very carefully rubs her hands over the giant wolf pelt laid out on the floor. Sitting in a corner watching the scene, the young man finds it weird that she is drying the pelt indoors, since the smell of the mess must be super strong. Soon it clicks for the MC, and he totally understands why his wife is treating the pelt with so much care. The young guy figures that giant wolf fur is an extremely valuable and precious item for the young lady's harsh reality. Curious about the new thing, little Dorothy slowly approaches her mom to inspect the defeated monster. The little girl touches the dark fur very cautiously, completely amazed by how soft the material is. The kid quickly smiles and starts playing on the warm pelt, making the mom super relieved to see her happy. Watching the scene from his corner, Juin smiles, satisfied that he managed to provide a fun moment for his daughter. Peace rules the humble wooden cabin, isolated from the rest of the village and surrounded by the massive forest trees. Focused on the chores, the wife starts rubbing spices into the fresh meat inside a round bowl. The husband pays close attention to the preservation process, deciding he will learn how to do it so he can take over the job next time. The young lady seems pretty hyped dealing with the animal fat, and the hunter celebrates internally that he didn't throw the leftovers away. However, the big guy gets a serious look on his face, realizing he still has a whole world of things to learn about that place. Staring at the wolf pelt, he makes plans to figure out how the trade works and what is considered wealth around there as fast as possible. Wasting zero time, the young man jumps up from the floor, determined to stop slacking and get back to the heavy work. The sudden movement startles the young woman, who widens her eyes seeing her husband walking out the door in a hurry. Noticing her frantic hand gestures, he stops right away and asks confused if she prefers him to stay seated. Shaking his head, the hunter calms his wife down saying he has rested enough and doesn't feel any pain anymore. Juan quickly lets her know he won't overdo the physical effort, asking her to relax as he walks away. The young lady stays quiet watching her husband walk toward the forest. Reaching the trees, he sizes up a log and decides the size is perfect for practicing his wood chopping. Holding the axe tight, the young guy remembers that oak is great for fires, trusting his strength even without any experience. Wasting no time, the MC winds up and swings the heavy cutting tool high. With a brutal swing, he strikes the log dead on. The impact is so heavy that the tree drops super fast right into the brush. Shocked by the outcome, the big guy is genuinely surprised by the impressive result of his work. Later, a peaceful vibe settles around the old wooden cabin. The door swings open, roughly revealing Juan, carrying an insane amount of firewood on his back. Startled by the noise, Lizzie and little Dorothy stare in shock at the entrance. The husband drops the heavy basket on the floor, making a loud crash of wood tumbling down. Worried, the young woman runs over to him and crouches to check if the young guy is okay. To calm her down, the hunter quickly assures her he is feeling great. Grateful for the concern, he notices little Dorothy sneaking up in the background. The little girl starts rushing across the cabin's wooden floor. Going straight for the water basin, she grabs a clean cloth to try and help out. Heading back to the husband, the kid carries the wet fabric in a huge hurry. Going all in, the girl scrubs the cloth right on the big guy's leg, catching the couple completely by surprise. The MC gets a solid jump scare from the little one's sudden action. Soon he bursts out laughing, finding the whole thing adorable, while the wife also cracks a smile. Surprised by the laughter, Dorothy looks up completely in awe. With a caring gesture, the hunter thanks the kid for the helpful backup. Hyped up, the girl starts scrubbing his leg non-stop, making the young man tell her it's time to take a break. On the other side, Lizzie watches the whole thing while Juan confesses that this feels just like a dream. He reflects that he never imagined living this kind of happiness and wishes to keep their smiles around forever. Outside, night falls over the isolated cabin in the woods. Smoke rises from the chimney, showing the spot inside is nice and toasty. Gathered around the simple table, the little family shares a huge and chill dinner. Full from the food, the young man puts his empty bowl on the table, while the young woman watches him closely. Right next to them, the little girl is already completely knocked out on the wooden floor. With a quick gesture, the husband whispers, letting her know the kid crashed hard from exhaustion. With extreme care, the big guy lifts the little one into his arms. He walks to the other side of the room, carrying the child while his wife tags along. Getting the bed ready, Juan fixes the blankets to make sure she is super comfortable. The hunter tucks the little girl in very carefully to protect her from the intense cold. The starry night lights up the small house isolated out in the dark. Back in the makeshift kitchen, Lizzie focuses on cleaning the pots and getting everything organized. Standing right behind her, the MC watches the young woman's work in total silence. Out of nowhere, he grabs the young lady's hand super gently. Totally surprised by the touch, she turns around slightly blushing. The young man looks at her with a calm gaze, setting up an intimate vibe in the room. Through the window, their silhouettes show they are standing really close and cozy. Caught in the moment, the husband hugs his wife affectionately and rests his head on her. Casually, the hunter starts taking off his own shirt. With her cheeks bright red, the young woman thinks to herself that she shouldn't feel embarrassed, since acting like this is totally normal for a wife. The young man pulls the heavy fabric off, revealing his physique. Facing the scene, Lizzie gets even more flustered and shy. He turns his face toward her, flashing a chill and welcoming smile. Dying of embarrassment, the young lady tries to cover her own face, internally admitting how nervous she is. Carefully, Juan holds her hand, trying to break the tension of the moment. The big guy pulls his wife in for a tight hug, leaving her completely speechless. Super quietly, the MC whispers in her ear, suggesting it's about time they hit the hay. The couple walks side by side, heading to the warmest corner of the old cabin. They both lay down on the soft floor, getting ready to rest after a massive day. Snuggled up in his arms, the young woman looks at him, feeling the comforting warmth of his hug. The husband pulls her even closer, making sure she stays completely safe from the cold. Overcome by peace, Lizzie relaxes her face and enjoys the feeling of safety. As a final move, the hunter plants a soft kiss on his wife's forehead. Holding the young lady, the MC thinks it's wild how soft she actually is. Right before falling asleep, he acknowledges that the young woman is truly his family now. Looking at the little girl sleeping, the young man sends up a silent prayer asking Santa not to take them away from him. In his head, he begs for both of them to live a long and happy life right by his side until the very end. In a world where nobles live in luxury mansions, the reality for regular folks is way different. In humble houses, kids grow up sharing the exact same cramped space with their parents. Because of this, it's impossible for the children not to know how couples spend their sleepless nights. In the young wife's memories, the late nights were marked by the terrifying shouts of her abusive father. Hiding under the covers, she would listen to her mom's painful crying until the sun came up. That constant terror made little Lizzie grow up completely dominated by pure fear. Tired of the pain, the girl was terrified her future would just be a repeat of her mom's nightmare. Back to the present, the young lady opens her eyes slowly in the dark cabin. The nice sound of firewood crackling in the fireplace wakes her up in a super smooth and chill way. Confused about where she is, she notices she is on the bed, since she had fallen asleep on the floor earlier. Snuggled up, Lizzie realizes her husband gave up his own arm to use as a pillow, so she and her daughter could sleep well. Tucked in her husband's arms, Lizzie feels a massive wave of relief, realizing that nights between a couple don't actually have to be that scary. Watching the young man sleep, the young woman reflects on how her world did a complete 180 since the moment she met this guy. Right then, Juin ends up waking up slowly and opens his eyes in the middle of the night. Still sleepy, the big guy pulls his wife even closer to his body in a tight hug. Totally frozen, the young lady feels her heart beat so fast it feels like it's going to pop right out of her chest. Overwhelmed by a tingling feeling, she just hopes from the bottom of her soul that this peaceful moment lasts forever. The next day, the bright sunlight shines through the small wooden window announcing the morning. The hunter sits up slowly on the bed, so he doesn't wake up the two who are still sleeping super chill. Before getting up, he gives little Dorothy a very gentle head pat. Later, the wife is walking around the cabin carrying a heavy wooden bucket. Quickly, the husband walks up and grabs the container right out of her hands to help. Caught completely off guard by the move, the young lady stares at him wondering why the sudden help. Wasting no time, the MC pours all the water from the bucket straight into the huge iron pot. Turning his face, the young man calls his wife by her name using his own native language. The young woman blinks her eyes, a bit confused hearing her husband's different pronunciation. The young guy asks if she slept well and finds it weird that her face is turning red out of nowhere. She nods her head while he guesses the embarrassment must be because of the way he called her. Thinking it over, the hunter considers using sweeter words like honey or wifey. Wanting to sort this out, the husband asks what he should call her and suggests just sticking to her name. Super embarrassed, the young woman asks very shyly for him to use the word honey. Juin repeats the word out loud, making his wife hide her face with her hands from so much embarrassment. Unable to handle the pressure of the moment, the young lady turns her back trying to play off the nerves. Finding that reaction the cutest thing in the world, the big guy gets a huge urge to tease her even more. Poking her back, he calls her honey again and asks her to look at him. Suddenly, little Dorothy jumps out from under the covers, totally killing the couple's romantic. With her eyes shining with hype, the little girl mumbles that she wants to eat meat. Right after that, the kid faceplants on the wooden floor looking completely drained of energy. Fired up again, the child sprints across the cabin shouting her own name at the two of them. The little girl zooms right past the couple at top speed showing off insane energy. Stopping on a dime, the girl throws her arms up and demands meat in a super hyped tone. The kid ends up jumping straight into the empty bucket, pulling genuine laughs out of the couple. Still sitting in the container, the little one keeps demanding her favorite food non-stop. Kicking her little legs against the wood, she throws a whole party demanding her meal. Letting out a loud laugh, the MC guarantees he is going to go all out on today's hunt. Already walking through the thick forest, the young guy feels super confident he can easily drop another wolf. Tapping his hand on his heavy axe, the hunter flexes about bringing a reliable weapon this time. His heavy footsteps crush the green grass as he pushes deeper and deeper into the woods. The vibe around him gets darker and more mysterious the further the big guy gets from the village. Suddenly, the MC stops walking and notices an incredibly heavy atmosphere completely taking over the area. Gripping the axe handle tight, he feels a suffocating vibe even standing in such an open space. The young guy gulps and wonders what kind of bizarre monster is going to jump out at him now. Just then, mysterious footsteps echo through the brush, showing someone creeping up from the shadows. Noticing the sketchy movement, the hunter turns his head going into full alert mode. A hooded figure appears walking slowly right toward Lizzie's husband. The stranger turns out to be an old man with his face half covered by a dark cloak. Staring down the unknown guy, the young man squints trying to figure out who this weird dude is. The old man checks out the mess and the trail of destruction left on the forest floor. Inspecting the giant footprints, the hooded guy figures out a massive beast came through here. He remembers spending the last few days spying on the newcomer, noticing the kid didn't even know how to hold an axe properly. Confused, the man wonders how such a total rookie managed to take down a monster that size. Shaking his head, the old guy thinks it's impossible even for a pro to hunt a beast like that with zero weapons. Hooked by the mystery, the stranger locks his eyes straight onto the big guy standing in front of him. Mumbling to himself, he decides he needs to confirm his suspicions once and for all. Without saying a word, the hooded man goes back to walking, going straight past the tense MC. The old guy stops his tracks, standing right next to Lizzie's husband in the middle of the trail. The veteran hunter's eyes instantly lock onto the fresh wounds on the young guy's arm. He recognizes the marks as a wolf bite, but finds it sketchy that the cut is perfectly clean. The stranger concludes that an injury on that level should have caused a fatal fever or a severe infection. Staring at the rookie in surprise, the old man starts suspecting that this young guy might actually be a magic user. In that dangerous world, the existence of overpowered mages who can cast healing spells is an absolute reality. However, those individuals are so rare that regular folks go their whole lives without ever seeing one up close. The MC stays frozen, just waiting for the next move from that mysterious older gentleman. A shady smile creeps onto the old man's face as he realizes he finally found the opportunity he had been waiting for. He celebrates internally, thinking his chance for revenge finally showed up before his time runs out. Uncomfortable with that crazy look, Juin tries to decode what the heck is wrong with this dude. The hooded man thinks back to his younger days, when he was a ruthless hunter packed with energy to fight. Back then, the forest rangers serving the nobles were forced to fight in wars in exchange for clout. Rejecting that fate, the man ditched his family and paved his own way as a free hunter in the mountains. Over time, he ended up settling in an isolated village, working a grueling job as a lumberjack. Even though the woods were free for the people, chopping wood was always an incredibly brutal gig. To score better materials, the young hunter started exploring the deepest and sketchiest zones of the region. Blinded by ambition, he ignored the fact that the older locals never stepped past the edge of the woods. The region's rule demanded that anyone trying to get an official contract with the lords needed to be physically 100% intact. Sadly, the old man ended up failing that basic requirement and completely lost his big shot in life. All of this went down because of a random encounter with a demonic beast that messed him up with zero mercy. The lore says that back in the day, goblins basically owned that entire mountain. The young hunter ended up getting cornered by one of those monstrous creatures. Those gross monsters had a habit of kidnapping the human women from the area. Getting overpowered by the beast, the guy figured out exactly why the village had a shortage of women. In that moment of absolute terror, the entire zone became known as the Goblin Village. The old man remembers enduring a miserable life focused entirely on getting his revenge. Consumed by hatred, he spent decades living among the locals only thinking about wiping those monsters out. The veteran stayed alive all this time with the single goal of burning those beasts' nests straight to the ground. Staring at Lizzie's husband, the hunter realizes he finally found someone capable of helping him out. From a distance, he notices an insane physique and raw power similar to a giant. On top of that absurd build, the rookie also rocks some bizarre healing abilities. The hooded guy concludes that this man can turn into the strongest warrior to ever step foot there. Knowing the goblins are going to raid the village once they run out of women, the clock is ticking. Until that day comes, the old man swears he is going to turn the young guy into an elite hunter. To guarantee the plan works, the veteran decides to keep the monster nest a secret until they lock in a deal. The rookie gives a polite bow to the instructor, speaking in his own language. Reading the young guy's stance, the veteran notices he keeps his guard way up even while acting nice. In a friendly gesture, the old man pulls down his hood and promises to teach him everything he knows about hunting. Without understanding a single word, Juin just watches the guy claim he is going to be a great warrior. The very next day, the big guy walks around the cabin feeling like the night went by way too fast. Peeking through the crack in the wooden door, the MC checks out the situation outside carefully. The husband decides he is absolutely not letting the old guy inside the house under any circumstances. His main worry is to stop strangers from getting comfortable walking in there when his wife and daughter are home alone. Right then, the young guy steps out of the cabin and bumps right into the instructor waiting in the yard. The veteran rocks a friendly face, but the big guy finds that expression incredibly sketchy. Instantly, his mind pulls up a memory of his old corporate boss kissing up to people. Juin compares the old man's face to a manager getting ready to slash his paycheck. Brushing that aside, the hunter tells his wife he is heading out to train and will be back soon. Inside, Lizzie blows on the hot food, packing a lunchbox in a total nervous hurry. The husband watches the scene with red cheeks, thinking her dedication is the absolute cutest thing ever. The young lady finishes making the meal, while the little one watches the whole process super closely. Super hyped, the little girl sprints across the cabin's wooden floor. The kid hits the brakes right in front of the MC, leaving the big guy completely taken by surprise. He gets it right away that the little one came to hand deliver the fresh lunchbox her mom just packed. Wrapping the food in a clean cloth, the young woman hands it over carefully, asking her husband to eat well. With a peaceful look in his eyes, Juin thinks about how awesome it is to have a family that actually takes care of him like this. The young lady waves enthusiastically, saying a phrase in her language, and the young man guesses it's a sweet goodbye. Wanting to learn, he repeats the words pointing at her, and his wife confirms it with a bunch of hype. Happy with the interaction, the hunter promises to be back quick, while the young lady gets a little shy. Right then, the big guy points at the girl, calling her name super loud in the yard. The little girl runs toward him, echoing the same goodbye phrase with a ton of energy. The MC waves back, looking totally goofy, guaranteeing the little one he'll be right back. Following the old guy through the forest, the husband admits internally he is hating the fact he had to leave the house. His eyes are full of affection as he focuses on the two of them, waving far back on the property. Completely won over, the young man admits his new wife and daughter are way too adorable for him to stay away. The hike through the thick woods drags on for what feels like an eternity. Losing his patience, Juin wonders what the guy wants to show him that's taking this crazy long. Suddenly, the veteran stops dead in the middle of the trail and says a few words in a teaching tone. The rookie reads the room and figures out the old guy wants him to pay close attention to his feet. The instructor takes a solid step forward, showing off a very specific type of movement. Checking out the ground, the young man notices the hooded guy's footsteps leave some really weird marks in the dirt. The MC widens his eyes, slightly surprised by the sketchy technique. He zeroes in completely on the footprints, confirming the old man is definitely not walking normally. His brain instantly jumps to the idea that this has to be some secret martial arts technique. Determined to master the skill, the big guy figures he just needs to watch and copy the moves. Wasting no time, the student lifts his leg, trying to mimic the heavy stomp of the instructor. The young guy starts walking down the path, forcing his own weight down hard against the dirt. Seeing the student's effort, the veteran nods, pretty satisfied with how fast he is picking it up. The duo keeps pushing through the forest, while the hands-on survival lessons continue without a break. The old guy makes the rookie touch the trunks, teaching him that each mountain has its own unique type of trees. Using a stick, the hunter draws in the dirt to teach him the complete layout of the region's terrain. After a ton of walking, the two of them finally hit the top of a really high rocky area. The veteran wipes his sweat and gives the signal that it's time to take a break and rest. Instantly, the rookie pulls out the cloth, carrying his precious home-cooked meal. Sitting on the rocks, Juin celebrates the chill moment he had been waiting for out in the woods. All hyped up, he gets ready to devour the lunchbox his wife made with so much love. The young man unties the fabric carefully so he doesn't drop a single thing on the dirt. As soon as he catches the amazing smell of the food, he praises it out loud, but catches an aggressive scolding from the old guy. Totally confused, the student stares at the veteran, having no idea why he is getting chewed out. The instructor waves his hands impatiently, ordering him to put that away right that second. The rookie realizes that the strong smell of human food quickly attracts wild animals in the forest. Bummed out by the situation, Juin closes the lunchbox, realizing he won't be able to eat his snack on the hunt. The young guy slumps in sadness and admits he kind of wants to cry for wasting the young lady's hard work. Shortly after, the duo arrives at a wooden cabin, and the student figures this must be the instructor's house. While the old man opens the door, the big guy notices that the shape of the bow on his back is really bizarre. Checking out the weapons, Juin finds the design of that hunting gear super weird, since the only bows he knows have a traditional curve. Focused on the tool in the instructor's hands, the young guy wonders how anyone could possibly shoot with a piece of wood that's straight and thick. Right then, the veteran tosses the heavy weapon straight into the student's hands and tells the rookie to follow him through the forest. Walking right behind the old guy, the big dude carries the heavy gear while doubting if it's actually possible to use that thing in a fight. The master stops in a clearing, and the rookie figures it would take absolute crazy strength to pull the string on such a stiff bow. To show him how it's done, the older hunter pulls the string of his own bow, making it look like an absolute breeze. Watching the scene, the MC is blown away when he notices the guy's body doesn't even shake from the tension, making it look like time stopped around him. In a flash, the projectile gets fired, tearing through the air at crazy high speed straight toward the target. The arrow slams into the thick tree trunk with brutal impact, burying itself deep into the wood. Totally mesmerized by the showcase, Lizzie's husband finally understands exactly how hunting works around there. Following the example, Juin lifts the gear and strains hard trying to pull the tough string. Instantly, the instructor steps in and starts fixing the student's awkward stance to improve his aim. With the old guy adjusting his arm firmly, the rookie finds it wild how much raw strength this older dude has without budging a single inch. Totally locked in on the training, the hunter holds his stance and focuses his mind fully on the target ahead. For that entire day, the young man goes all out trying to absorb the words and movements needed to become a true hunter. Focused on his goal, the big guy decides he needs to master hunting fast so he can provide for his house completely solo. With a determined look, he swears to become a man who can supply absolutely everything his wife and daughter need to live comfortably. Far from there, the old wooden cabin stays chill under the blue sky, while an upbeat singing echoes from inside. Rolling around the bed without a care in the world, little Dorothy happily sings about her new dad's dark hair and the delicious meat. Satisfied, the little girl sits on the mattress rubbing her own belly, feeling totally stuffed from the tasty food. The kid bursts into laughter, enjoying a moment of pure peace in the comfort of her new home. Watching her mom smile in relief, the little one notices the two of them never used to laugh before the hunter showed up. Seeing the young woman fold clothes with such calmness, the girl feels her heart get super warm like sitting next to a fireplace. All fired up about her new life, Dorothy jumps off the bed hoping her stomach empties out fast just so she can eat more meat. However, a doubt pops into the kid's mind about what her real role in that family actually is, since Juin is the young lady's husband. Walking around the bedroom, she realizes neither of them are her actual blood parents. The fear of being abandoned creeps back in, making the girl wonder if her new protector is going to just take his wife away sometime soon. With her eyes full of tears, the little one anxiously wonders what the heck is going to happen to her. Wiping her face to dry the tears, the little girl is terrified of being left behind again just like her late dad did. Suddenly, she turns toward the living room and gets a jump scare when she realizes her mom is out of sight. Hiding in a dark corner of the house, the kid remembers the past trauma of getting called useless 24/7. The painful memory brings back the voice of her old abuser claiming she was only good for wasting the house's food since she wasn't a boy. With a heavy heart, the girl gets terrified just thinking about the possibility of losing the precious meal they just scored. Running purely on survival instinct, the little one rushes to hide the meat before dealing with anything else. Knowing the food is safe for now, she goes back to wondering where her new mom actually went. Tiptoeing around, Dorothy peeks through the door frame trying to figure out what is going down outside. Poking her face through the crack, the little girl gulps and goes into complete shock at the scene in the yard. Totally terrified, the kid shrinks back against the wooden wall trying to hide so she doesn't get spotted. Watching the chaos, the girl instantly recognizes the group of villagers circling the young wife on the lawn. The trauma hits her brain hard, remembering that these were the exact same guys who used to beat up her late dad, who would then take his anger out on her and her blood mom. Crying in despair, the kid is terrified that Lizzie might end up getting beaten to her breaking point, just like what happened to her real mom back in the day. Outside, one of the invaders demands to know where the smell of food is coming from and accuses the young lady of stealing meat from the village, but she denies it. The guy grabs the young woman's arm while she tries to explain that her new husband hunted the animal, making the attacker just laugh in her face. Another villager yells that they hooked her up with a new fiancé so she could survive, and in return she's out here swiping their supplies. Ignoring the young woman's defense, the leader of the group suggests they bust into the cabin to trash the place looking for it. With absolute brutality, the villager shoves the young wife into the dirt and tells her to shut her mouth. Without a drop of respect, the men leave the young lady lying out there and aggressively invade the wooden cabin. Tearing through the dark room, the looters stumble upon the massive monster pelt laid out and are left completely speechless. The leader strokes the animal's soft fur, realizing that single piece is worth an absolute fortune on the market. Hyped about the jackpot, the guy orders his crew to tear apart every corner of the house to steal even more stuff. Hiding under the bed, little Dorothy shakes in absolute terror listening to the invaders searching for the meat. The little girl holds her breath in pure rage, knowing very well those cowards didn't hunt a single piece of that. Feeling the desperation kick in, the young wife gets up fast and rushes back inside her own house. The young lady throws her arms open in front of the intruders, trying to guard the wolf pelt with her own life. In tears, Lizzie screams at the top of her lungs, warning them not to touch it because that item belongs to her family. The leader just stares at the young lady's brave move with a smirk, reminding her that back in the day she wouldn't even make a peep out of fear. Taken over by rage, the attacker kicks the young woman right in the stomach with zero mercy, claiming she only grew a spine because of her husband. From the force of the cowardly hit, the young lady gets tossed violently against the floorboards. Totally defenseless, she groans in pain trying to handle the physical assault she just took. From her tight hiding spot, the kid watches her new mom get beaten and stays frozen in pure terror. Fallen and bruised, Juwon's wife loses her strength while a look of pure despair takes over her face. Suddenly, the young lady realizes the immediate danger, hearing the invaders' shady talk about what they plan to do with her. It finally hits little Dorothy that she always pretended she didn't know about the cruel things happening right around her. Crying in her hiding spot, the girl blames herself, thinking she was abandoned because she always hid, and goes into full panic mode not knowing what to do. Mocking the whole situation, the leader asks if the young lady got her will to live back, and thinks about the risks if the mountain guardian finds out about all this. One of the goons calms the crew down, stating the rookie doesn't speak the language and the guardian already bounced, so nobody is going to find out about the robbery. Moving fast, the men grab the young woman by her arms and decide to drag her into the woods by force. The leader announces he is going to handle the girl personally, while the rest of them strip the cabin completely clean. Being dragged into the dark, Lizzie begs for mercy, while the attacker threatens to burn the house down if she says a word to her husband. Laughing at her misery, the coward celebrates the insane profit of the day and drags the defenseless young lady right out of there. As soon as the house is empty, the kid crawls out from under the bed in a state of absolute panic. The little one runs stumbling through the room, terrified that her new mom might never come back home. Staring at the daylight through the open door, the little girl understands perfectly well that some awful things are going to happen to the young lady out in the brush. Unable to hold back the pain, Dorothy breaks down crying, screaming in agony over the tragedy that just wrecked her family's peace. Bawling at the cabin entrance, the girl desperately begs for the big guy to hurry back and save her mom from those monsters. Crying completely hopelessly, the little girl cries out that the villagers are taking her mom away. Totally clueless to all this, the old man casually walks through the forest and mentions the training day felt super long. Happy with the progress, the hunter gives his student a light tap on the shoulder. The instructor thanks him for today's effort, showing he actually trusts the kid. Right at that moment, a loud cry echoes through the woods, making Juwon snap his head back, completely startled as he recognizes Dorothy's voice. Instantly, he figures the little girl would never cry like that over nothing. The big guy gets incredibly tense, wondering if something terrible just went down at the house. Without a second thought, he sprints down the trail, terrified that his wife or daughter might be hurt. Busting into the clearing, the hunter widens his eyes, catching the attackers dragging the young lady away. Consumed by an uncontrollable rage, the husband swears to take down whoever is responsible for this. Spooked by his sudden arrival, the invaders turn around looking completely confused. Without giving them a single second to react, the MC charges in and lands a devastating punch right on one of their faces. From the brutal impact, the guy gets launched into the dirt, completely knocked out cold. Fallen on the grass, the wife watches her husband's entrance in absolute shock. The big guy keeps marching straight toward the other goons, who start backing up terrified. One of the villagers shakes in pure terror, seeing his buddy out cold in the brush. Taking advantage of the opening, Juwon delivers an insanely powerful kick to the attacker. The invader drops to the ground, coughing from the impact of the brutal hit. Desperate, another goon tries to throw a punch at the hunter. The MC simply grabs the enemy by his clothes, hoisting him right up into the... Choking, the man thrashes around trying to break free from the crushing grip. With absolute brutality, the young man slams the invader right into the ground. Immediately, the husband charges the group leader and sweeps him off his feet. He punches the coward's face over and over, thinking about how disgusting human nature can be, always preying on the weak. With a dark look in his eyes, the big guy states he needs to burn this terror deep into their minds. The goal is to make sure these pieces of trash never even think about stepping near his family again. Pinning the attacker down, the hunter hears a noise and glances over. Right then, his wife screams his name in pure panic, making the young guy turn his face in surprise. The young lady tries to warn him of the danger, as the goon who got dropped earlier sneaks up from behind swinging a scythe. Reacting fast, the MC catches the enemy's wrist before the blade can hit him dead on. Rocking a straight-up demonic expression, Juwon squeezes the guy's arm with all his fury. Right at that moment, the old hunter shows up, yelling for the student to stop the beatdown immediately. The veteran grabs the young guy's shoulder, demanding him to chill out once and for all. Pointing behind him, the instructor tells him to look at how terrified his family is by that brutal scene. The hunter focuses on his wife, noticing the look of absolute panic on her face. Further back, little Dorothy is crying while holding onto the cabin's wooden door. It finally clicks for the MC, and he realizes the massive terror he just caused the two of them. Calmness returns to the area, showing the wooden cabin isolated deep in the forest. Looking at her husband, Lizzie reflects that he seemed so gentle he didn't even know how to get mad, but he just unleashed a terrifying rage. The young woman admits his aggressiveness reminded her of her abusive late husband. Taken over by fear, she was terrified of ending up getting beaten just like those invaders on the ground. However, as soon as the young lady focuses on Juwon's eyes, all that panic vanishes, realizing he wasn't trying to scare her. She understands those eyes were just desperately trying to protect her. Right then, the big guy walks up to her with an expression that shows he is terrified of getting rejected. Calling his wife's name, he looks genuinely worried, making the young woman wonder why he cares so much about her reactions. Gathering her courage, the young lady slowly gets up from the dirt. She notices her own hands shaking and realizes that is exactly why her husband thinks she is scared. Locking eyes with the young man, the young lady mentally begs him not to make such a heartbroken face. The wife curses the language barrier, wishing she could easily just say out loud that she isn't terrified of him. Decided to show her real feelings, she takes a solid step forward. Without hesitating, Lizzie runs straight toward the MC, calling his name in relief. Her fast steps close the gap between them on the lawn. Getting close, the young lady grabs the hunter's hands super gently. As soon as she feels the warmth of the young guy's touch, she is completely sure of what she feels. With a sweet smile, the young woman concludes she is totally safe by his side and nobody will be able to hurt her. In an affectionate gesture, she presses the big guy's massive hands right against her own chest. With tears of relief in her eyes, the young lady thanks him sincerely for having her back. The MC is completely blown away by his wife's welcoming reaction. Seeing the young woman rest her face against his hands with so much trust, he whispers her name, feeling super emotional. Washed over with relief, Juwon pulls her in for a tight hug and also thanks her for trusting him. Hugging the young lady, the husband strokes her back, not really getting why she is so grateful. The hunter thinks that, honestly, he should be the one thanking her for accepting him. Suddenly, little Dorothy watches the scene with her eyes wide open in surprise. The little girl leans against the cabin door, letting out a very quiet hum. Hearing the noise, Juwon turns his head toward the shack's entrance. Worried, the big guy walks over to the kid, calling her name in a soft tone. Right behind him, Lizzie rushes over, wanting to make sure her daughter is okay. The young woman stops in front of the kid, letting out a sigh of relief that she is safe. But the little one keeps shaking and crying, completely unable to chill out. In the kid's mind, the scary memory of the young guy dropping brutal punches on the invaders to defend them pops up. The past trauma comes rushing back, bringing up images of the bruised faces of her biological mom and Lizzie herself. The girl is terrified of ending up with her face covered in bruises in the future and tries to hold back the tears, remembering that crying only led to more beatings. The little one focuses on the young lady's face, knowing she needs to apologize fast before she gets ignored like her old stepmom used to do. Kneeling in front of the child, the wife listens to the kid beg for forgiveness for hiding and plead not to be abandoned. In tears, Dorothy takes the blame for the break-in, completely consumed by the fear of losing her brand new family. Hugging the little one, the young lady asks what she is even talking about. In a comforting tone, Lizzie explains she only pretended not to know her because she was terrified those bad guys would find her. The mom guarantees the little girl has absolutely zero things to feel guilty about, making the kid ask if that is actually true. Pointing at the big guy in the background, the young lady claims everything is totally fine because her dad showed up, but the kid finds it weird and points out her old dad passed away. Juwon's wife asks if the daughter doesn't know who the young man really is. Super excited, the young woman explains the hunter is her husband, which the girl confirms she already knew. So the young lady breaks it down that this marriage automatically makes the guy the little girl's brand new dad. Using logic, Lizzie asks if she herself is the girl's stepmom, getting an instant yes. Because of that, the mom declares that Juwon is now the kid's dad, leaving the little one totally mind-blown by the news. Staring at the hunter's broad back, the little girl whispers the word dad, still trying to wrap her head around the idea. The girl turns to her mom and asks one more time if he is really her dad, getting a very sweet confirmation. Giving her daughter a head pat, Lizzie guarantees he is completely different from the old abuser who died, and is actually someone focused on keeping them safe. The young woman explains that protection was exactly why the hunter beat up those scary dudes so brutally. Plus, she confesses she actually asked for his help to handle that super tense situation. Totally amazed by the reveal, little Dorothy hypes up and screams, calling out for her new dad. Watching the hunter, the little girl reflects on how that huge guy with giant hands is actually her family now. Packed with energy, the girl runs out of the cabin, acknowledging she has a super strong and awesome dad to protect them. The memory of the warm nights pops up, remembering that he hugs her tight to sleep and never ever raises a hand to hit her. The little one also remembers how nice he is, the delicious meat he brought home, and the beautiful name she got as a gift. Thinking about all that, Dorothy thinks it's simply amazing that the person who gave her a name is her dad. Hearing all the yelling, the MC turns his face, looking startled as he hears the kid calling out for him. The little girl keeps sprinting across the lawn straight at the big guy without stopping her happy screams. Without a second thought, the young man opens his arms, getting ready to catch his daughter in a hug. With a jump, the kid throws herself into his arms, while repeating the word dad with some seriously contagious joy. The hunter hugs the little one affectionately, noticing that even without understanding the language, he can perfectly feel what those words mean. Juwon squeezes the kid against his chest, soaking in the comforting feeling of actually holding a daughter in his arms. But soon the cute vibe gets interrupted when the big guy catches a really weird smell coming out of nowhere. Looking down at his own clothes, he spots a huge wet stain and realizes the girl ended up peeing herself from so much excitement. Seeing the girl's innocent and glowing face, the young man actually feels bad for focusing on the accident, but decides he needs to change her clothes fast so she doesn't catch a cold. Moving quick, the hunter runs across the yard carrying the wet kid right back to the cabin. The young wife joins the hug, and the little family shares a moment of pure joy and relief out in the yard. However, resting on her dad's shoulder, the little girl widens her eyes, remembering a super important detail. The kid points frantically behind her, screaming about the meat, leaving Lizzie's husband completely confused. Totally ignoring the knocked-out invaders on the ground, Dorothy takes off running while Juwon tries to call her back. The little one sprints across the lawn with an unbreakable determination focused entirely on her grand treasure. The dash ends when the girl stops dead in front of the wooden bucket left behind on the grass. Curious, she leans over the edge of the container to double-check the inside very carefully. Her face fills with relief when she confirms the juicy pieces of meat are still sitting right there untouched. The couple pulls up right behind her running, with the young guy calling his daughter while she is already grabbing the bucket with everything she's got. Flexing super hard, the little girl tries to lift the wooden container that is practically her own size. The kid starts dragging the heavy load across the floor, leaving the hunter seriously impressed by her willpower. Watching the hilarious scene, the MC admits to himself that the girl's obsession with food is actually kind of scary. To make things easier, the big guy steps up and lifts the heavy bucket without breaking a sweat. The little one lets out a sound of pure awe watching her new dad pick up all that meat so easily. Staring into the kid's bright admiring eyes, Juwon jokes that becoming a hero in her eyes was actually a ridiculously easy task. His wife gestures, asking them to just take the food inside the house already. Pointing at the fallen invaders, the young lady warns her husband that it's sketchy to leave the kid out there near them. The hunter agrees and walks alongside the hopping girl back inside the shack safely. Heading back out to the yard solo, Juwon lets out a heavy sigh to blow off the tension of the moment. The young man walks with firm steps straight toward the cowards who are still groaning in pain on the property's dirt. A dark aura takes over the MC's face, showing he is definitely still pissed about the attack. Right then, the old instructor pops up out of nowhere and grabs the student's arm to stop him from doing anything extreme. The veteran shakes his head, telling him not to take anyone out, and the young guy questions if he should really just let them walk away. Thinking it over, the big guy realizes if he gets locked up or becomes a slave again because of this trash, his family will be left completely defenseless. Looking at the cabin door, he remembers he has real responsibilities now and isn't alone in the world anymore. Staring down the knocked-out thugs, the hunter drops a threatening warning, saying he is going to memorize every single one of their faces perfectly. The young guy quickly shifts his focus and grabs a tool right out of the old instructor's hands. Checking out the dropped boxes, Lizzie's husband decides he is at least going to confiscate those essential survival items as payback. Inside the house, the young lady hugs her scared daughter until the wooden door slowly opens up. Juwon steps into the cabin carrying the heavy supply chest swiped from the attacker's right on his shoulder. Kneeling on the wooden floor, the young guy drops the heavy toolbox right next to the super valuable wolf pelt. While sorting out the confiscated loot, he reflects that the pain of losing a family in the past was already more than enough for one lifetime. A light but determined expression settles on the hunter's face as he accepts his brand new purpose. Turning to his wife and daughter, the big guy swears to himself that no matter what goes down, he is going to protect the two of them with his own life.